What's up, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of the Sit Down. As always, if you enjoy this video, please make sure you hit that like button. Let me know what you think of today's very interesting discussion in the comment section below. If you're new around here, you just haven't done it yet, or you're living under a rock and seeing this video for the first time, I don't know what you're waiting for. Hit that subscribe button below now so you never miss another sit down video. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get into another very interesting organized crime topic. And one of the favorite mob films of many mob enthusiasts is Donnie Brasco, starring Al Pacino and Johnny Depp. As we know, this is mostly a story based on real life events. Recently, I came across a very interesting post on the website LCN Bios, and it detailed a series of very interesting interviews done in the 90s with the FBI and members of the Bonanno Crime Family relating to Benjamin Lefty Guns Ruggiero, played in the film by Al Pacino. As we know, the real life Lefty Guns was really one of the people most to blame for the infiltration of Joe Pistone into the mafia. Why was he never whacked by the mafia? The story next on Sit Down Shorts. And I'm also going to detail what this interesting document says about the possibility that the FBI believed that there was a death threat on the life of Agent Joe Pistone pertaining to when Lefty got out of prison. Before, though, we get into that, I do want to talk about a little background on Lefty. Obviously, it was said Lefty Guns was a stickler for the rules, and he was a man's man and a gangster's gangster. That said, Lefty did have a bit of a big mouth. Like many mobsters, he was very much wiretapped. A lot of the phone calls involving Donnie Brasco. At one point, he would say many things to the agent turned wannabe wise guy. And I urge you to check those out. They can be found on YouTube. One of the big things Lefty had a major issue with that at times hurt him as a mobster was his penchant for gambling. It's been widely reported, including on this channel, Lefty had a major gambling problem. In fact, for a long period of time, it prevented him from being made. In the 70s, he owed Bonanno captain Nicky Glass's Marangello in upwards of $200,000 to cover losses that he had sustained gambling. Now, Lefty early on was under Bonanno captain Mike Sabella, and after paying back the money, he would become a made member in the mafia. Sadly, though, for Lefty Guns Ruggiero, his main reputation and legacy will always be that he allowed Joe Pistone, aka Donnie Brasco, to come around the family. As I said, the mafia took care, though, of most of the people involved, including Sonny Black Napolitano, who was the captain of Lefty's crew, as well as the guy who originally brought Pistone around, Bonanno heavyweight Tony Mira. Both of those individuals were whacked. I want to jump to, though, 1981, because the FBI would make it clear to the Bonanno family that Joe Pistone was actually an FBI agent and not a mobster. The question is, and in the film, it's presumed that Lefty is whacked by the mob. That never happened, though. And it was because he was picked up. I know you know all this, though. I want to jump to when Lefty Guns is sentenced. In 1981, he's picked up by the FBI and probably his life was saved. Did the mafia actually want to kill him? I'll talk about that in a second. Lefty ultimately got 15 years in prison and he was pretty much forgotten about. The family would go through to Joe Massino, and into the 90s, when Lefty was released, the question was, would Big Joey and the family do anything about old school Lefty Guns? Because in the end, the mob never forgets. It could be 10 years later. They're still going to take out justice on people that have done wrong in the family. In approximately April of 1993, Lefty Guns would walk out of FCI Danbury in Connecticut. He would do his 11 years and head back to the streets. Approximately 4 days after he was released, on April 6th, 1993, the FBI would visit Lefty Guns at his apartment in Knickerbocker Village. Now, these documents come courtesy of the great folks at LCM Bios, and I'm glad they posted it because it's quite fascinating. I want to read the transcript as to what the meeting was about between Lefty and the feds. According to the documents, Ruggiero was informed the nature of the visit by the FBI was twofold. He was advised that the FBI was in receipt of what it considered reliable information that a threat existed against his life, and that it had additional information that Lefty Guns Ruggiero was contemplating revenge against Joe Pistone, aka Donnie Brasco. That said, at no time did the interviewing agents mention Joe Pistone's name by name, but Ruggiero made repeated references to him. Now, Lefty Guns would dismiss the notion that he had anything to fear on the street now that he was out, and that he pointed out that he had been in prison with, quote, many wise guys and was far more likely to have been in jeopardy there than on the streets. He would also comment that he had done his time like a man and had returned to his home neighborhood and had every intention of walking about freely. He rebuffed the agent's attempts to leave him a business card or contact number, asserting he could, quote, take care of himself. Now, the feds would further look to Lefty to make sense of some threats that they had heard about Pistone. As to threats against Pistone, Ruggiero denied making threats of any kind. He alleged that at one time, an unidentified informant in prison had thwarted his bid for bail by, quote, falsely reporting he had been making those threats. Now, although he denied plotting any reprisal, Ruggiero made no effort to hide his resentment against Pistone and suggested the interviewing agent should share this resentment. He claimed that Pistone and that he complained regularly about him. Now, throughout the course of the interview, Ruggiero made frequent references to transcripts from his case and displayed a thorough knowledge of Pistone. At one point, he even gestured in the direction of a stack of videotapes in his living room and commented, though, that the content of the program was, quote, old stuff, and that he essentially didn't care anymore about it. He would also assure the interviewing FBI agents that Donnie Brasco, aka Pistone, had, quote, nothing to fear from, that he had terminal cancer and merely wanted to spend what time he had left on the street with his grandchildren. He would also advise that he was to enter the hospital immediately after Easter of that year for lung surgery, and that would happen days later. Now, Ruggiero was then in final warned that his activities would be monitored, and that if they would learn that he was trying to determine the whereabouts of anyone connected to the case, an immediate attempt to violate his probation would be initiated. So the FBI went there twofold. They went to first say they had credible information that even into the 90s, the Bonanno Crime Family still was looking to take care of Lefty Guns. And I'm going to get to what other people said regarding this. They also, though, wanted to make sure the old Lefty Guns wasn't getting any ideas about taking out Joe Pistone. Now, we have heard from Joe Pistone over the years that there was a, quote, $500,000 bounty on his head. I want to then talk about what the agents then did. Hours later, on the same day after visiting Lefty Guns, agents would visit Bonanno boss Joe Massino at his Howard Beach residence. The file states Joe Massino was contacted at his residence by special agents who advised him of their official identities. Massino was therefore advised that Benjamin Ruggiero, aka Lefty Guns, was recently released from prison, and that the FBI was concerned about Ruggiero seeking revenge against Joe Pistone. Massino would state to the FBI he was unaware Ruggiero was getting out of prison, at which time the SA's special agents advised him that he was released 4 days earlier on April 2nd, 1993. Now, Massino would initially indicate he was not meeting with anyone. However, he acknowledged that he does see certain people. Massino stated he would, quote, get the word out and that there will be, quote, no problems you can sleep on it. Now, that comes in reference to there being no threats or problems that will come to Donnie Brasco, a.k.a. Agent Joe Pistone. Now, several hours later, the agents would then visit. That's not who we're looking for. We're looking for him. The agents would visit Bonanno consigliere Anthony Spiro at the West End Social Club in Bath Beach. They would identify themselves, and Spiro would make it clear that he was familiar with the identity of the interviewing agent, who told him that the FBI was concerned about threats made by Benjamin Ruggiero, aka Lefty Guns, relating to Joe Pistone. Spiro would state that there was, quote, nothing for the Bureau to be concerned about because, quote, barking dogs don't bite. Spiro would state that Ruggiero was old and sick and would be unable to do anything to Pistone, even if he could locate Pistone. So they basically chalked up Ruggiero on both ends to being just an old, sick man who really was just talking and had no intention or could even take that out if he could. And they essentially chalked him up to just being old, and they were done worrying about him. That said, we would learn some interesting things from Bonanno underboss Sal Vitale in his testimony down the road. As we know, Ruggiero never carried out anything, and he actually died of natural causes in 1994. That said, Salvatore Vitale would later testify about a, quote, aborted plot to poison Ruggiero's food during his early 80s stint and incarceration at Manhattan's Metropolitan Correctional Center, though he didn't go far deep into how that happened or who was going to carry it out. It just never happened. So initially, in 1981, probably right when Lefty Guns was picked up and taken to the MDC in 1981, there probably was a thought that they wanted to take out old trash, but it never happened. And by 1993, once Lefty Guns was out on the street, he was so sick, they just didn't even worry about it. So there likely could have been a reprisal, but by that point, Massino was so much under scrutiny, he, you think, just chalked up Lefty Guns to being an old guy who was sick and pretty much retired. I do, though, find it interesting that Pistone's never really went into depth as to what the threats were. I guess these were the threats, though, and Lefty Guns said they were essentially not true and that he was never going to do anything. I'm not sure that he could anyway. As I said, Lefty Guns would die in 1994, about a year and a half after his meeting with the government. So what do you think? Why didn't the Bonanno family do anything about this? I'm sure they could have done something, but that said, could they? I'm not really sure of any murders that have ever come in the federal system that have been done by mobsters to mobsters in prison. So that said, by the 90s, I think it was just old business. And we would also learn, too, that down the road, according to Joe Massino, when he cooperated, Anthony Mira was whacked because he was an informant. And there was good info to point that out. And I've talked about that in previous videos. We would also learn that Sonny Black was actually not killed due to the fact that the infiltration happened with the Bonanno family. It's that Joe Massino stated he was whacked because he was getting too much of a profile, and Massino viewed him as a threat. So in the end, maybe Lefty Guns never had anything to worry about because the people in terms of Mira and Sonny Black were whacked probably for other things. So maybe Lefty Guns had nothing to worry about ever. And in the end, he was just an old man that they didn't worry about. So interesting info. I'm glad that LCM Bios put it out. Make sure you go check them out. One of the best websites in this business. Other than that, shorter video today. I just found this information interesting, so I thought I'd share. Let me know what you think of this and Donnie Brasco, the film, in the comments below. We'll see you next week here on The Sit Down.